Trolling law enforcement. What's your story? College town. Huge party. Excise cops are in town busting parties left and right. Ours gets busted. They proceed handing out tickets to underage drinkers. One kid gets a scrap piece of paper and folds it into the shape of the tickets the cops are handing out and sits on the front steps with his head in hands repeating, "My parents are gonna duck and hill me." Cops just pass him right by. I grew up in a small town. Really small. The only way to have any form of entertainment was to drive 30 minutes to the next city to go to the movies, bowling, etc. Just so happens that on the highway halfway between the two cities there was a small town known for being a speed trap. The highway was out of the jurisdiction of the local police, so what the marshal would do is hide in between overpasses to catch speeders, force them to pull over onto the frontage road, which was in his jurisdiction. Then he would claim an exaggerated speed. When people asked to see his radar, which is perfectly legal, he claimed that he didn't have to because it was illegal. Any claims reported to his superior seemed to go ignored until he ran into me. Over time my friends and I had timed his patrols and realized that he patrolled towards the end of the month. One night he had stopped a friend for excessive speeding. The officer claimed 92 in a 60 zone, which was BS, and then we knew something had to be done. The officer had taken his plate number and claimed to have seen it speeding many different times, and we knew he would look out for it. So I decided to take my phone and rig it up to record the speedometer and get pulled over by the officer. It took a few tries, but I managed to get pulled over by the same officer for doing 70 in 60. That being a first time offense. After giving him my license he went on to claim that I was doing at least 85. And giving me the whole bit about how he cannot show me the radar. As well as giving me a ticket claiming it was a repeat offense and how I should be put into jail. All this being caught on my phone without him noticing. So a few days later I show up to the courthouse to pay the ticket, and I managed to talk to the mayor of the town and showed him the video of all this. Thanks to me the officer got fired and I didn't have to pay a $400 ticket from a douchebag. I am from Arizona, where the police like to bust into people's homes for no reason, use unnecessary force when dealing with anyone, and basically just run around like they own the ducking place because it's a horrific police state. But I moved to Portland and was at a house party once. The house party was huge, like 300-ish people, all smoking blunts and drinking more than necessary. The party got too big to be indoors, so it kind of spilled into the street. So there are a ton of loud wasted people running around acting like 4-year-olds. And the police show up. Everyone freezes. Dead silence. While the 4 cops walk around, looking bemused. One of the cops finds the guy who threw the party, and we all watch in horror as the cop approaches this stoned as duck and wasted man. He approaches him and says, "Hey, we were just driving by and wanted to stop by to see if you guys wanted some free stuff." Cue instant WTF. The cops took these huge boxes out of the trunks filled with little things like pencils, bike lights, plastic little badges, kid stuff. They hand it all out and we all got free stuff. And while they were there they discussed how to get home safely, be it by foot or car. It all went far better than expected, and after they left we all played with the pencils and little erasers for a good hour, having mini lightsaber battles. Added bonus, we all got some education on how to get home safely. And some other random facts about what police do and how they operate. Information that I find useful every once in a while. Edit, ignorance. I've never actually done this but always wanted to. Get 5 total friends together all wearing costumes. Dress up as a biker, construction worker, Indian, cowboy, and a GI. Then go to public place where the police walk around. And just follow the cop around. I was in the back of a police car. Wasn't under arrest. But I was drunk on New Year's and the cop was offering to take me back to the party I had come from. I suspect because he wanted to know where it was. Possibly break it up later on. I let him know my suspicions and he denied them. As we drove I asked him where the seat belts were in the back seat. He said don't worry about it. I said, but what if we get pulled over? He stopped the car and said get out. This was about 10 years ago. My mother had a large plant in a plastic pot that died. I took the pot full of dirt and put it in the trunk of my car to replant something at my house. I forgot about it for a few weeks. I got pulled over for something. The cop asked, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" And I said, "Was it speeding? Or was it because of the pot in my trunk?" He got me out of the car and had me put my palms on the hood while I was searched. He opened the trunk and was not happy. I got chewed out for wasting his time and such and such. I noticed that not one single car passed. So it wasn't wasting too much of his time. I walked over to a police van, drunk, knocked on their window, and once they opened it I, with a very serious and informative look, said, "Excuse me sir. Your window is open." Then I walked back to my friends. The police came after me and took me to the police station. But let's not get into that. Not my story but a friend's. He was walking across campus with his backpack to a study group, and a cop or campus security stopped him and started asking him all these questions about where he was going and what was in the bag, etc. He decided to not let the cop see inside his bag and not tell him. The cop threatened him saying he was going to get a warrant. And finally he did. After about an hour of waiting, the cop gets his warrant and looks inside the bag. Just books. This is the first time that I think the OP made the best contribution to the topic. That's pretty awesome. Those cops were big digs for artificially creating criminals to bust. Around 2 AM on a Saturday night I was pulled over for suspicion of DWI. I hadn't had a drop. They asked me to step out of the car and gave me a sobriety test. I passed with flying colors. They asked me if they could search the vehicle. I told them they could search the vehicle, with the sole exception of the center console. They would need a warrant for that. After several hours sitting roadside, they finally produced a warrant from a judge. The center console was empty. After being pulled over to the side of a two-lane highway for speeding. "Officer, why were you in such a rush?" Me, "Just keeping up with traffic sir." "Officer, there's no one in front of you." Me, "Cheeky grin goes to show you how fast traffic is moving today. I got a ticket." With 500 comments, no one will ever read this. But it's one of the best cop stories I've ever heard. Not mine. Friend of a friend. A friend of a friend was driving to Florida from New York. He was crossing through the backwoods of Georgia going quite fast. When he got pulled over, the southern cop sidles up to his car and drawls, "Now son, I ain't never seen anyone go through my state that fast." To which the friend replied with a grin, "What about General Sherman? He spent the night in jail." In the city I live in, you need to purchase a license to work in public spaces or street. A few weeks ago, I was walking through a pedestrian zone where a man was playing the violin and I stopped by to listen. Sure enough, within a minute 2 policemen showed up and asked him for his license. Of course he didn't have one. So they started taking his information to give him a fine. That's when an old lady started talking to me really loudly about how that's a shame, and I answered something along the line of, "They are right to stop him." What would become of the world if everybody just started to play music on the street? People might start dancing. This goes on for about 5 minutes. The lady and me standing about 3 feet from the police, and maybe 20 people stopped and were watching. Everyone else walking by is smirking. It was a good feeling when I heard, "You know what? We're gonna let you go this time. Make sure to buy a license." Got arrested after walking out of a bar when I was 18 with a 6-pack. Cops said the only way I wouldn't be charged was if I would walk back in the bar in a couple weeks with a recording device and buy another 6-pack. Probably putting the bar out of business. I agreed. Walked into the bar. Asked for a 6-pack, and when the bartender looked me in the eyes I just shook my head at him and mouthed "No." He ID'd me, told me to get the duck out. Cops get nothing. I didn't get charged. I live in Daytona Beach. During spring break and other busy times of beach going, my friends and I would idle down the beach in my Jeep with no doors or anything open, along with the windshield down, while smoking tobacco out of bongs and bowls and joints. Each one of the four of us would have some sort of apparatus in our hand while we looked beach patrol dead in the eye while driving by. We would get pulled over every ducking time. Then we would get our asses chewed out for distracting them from public safety, aka preying on hot as 18-19-year-old chicks for underage drinking. My mother drives a Jeep, which the top is off and off of. We pulled up in the fire lane out front of a bank, because my mother is kind of an idiot. And she ran inside to use the ATM. I was 15 at the time. And while she's inside, a police officer walks up to the Jeep, sticks his head in the driver's side window, and says, "Is this your vehicle, son?" To which I replied, "Yes. I sometimes like to park in illegal places and sit in my own passenger seat." He didn't say a word. Stood back, crossed his arms and just glared at me. My mom came out about 10 seconds later. He took a look at her and said, "Have a nice day, mom," and walked away. There's a bike path where I live that has a posted 15 miles per hour speed limit for cyclists. One time a slightly overweight policeman actually sat on the trail with a radar gun and caught me going well over the limit. I managed to maneuver past him on the trail and he immediately mounted his mountain bike and began chasing me. Because I was riding a road bike and was in much better shape than him, there was no chance of him catching me. I actually toyed with him a little, letting him catch up a little every now and then. On 4/20 this year, the cops were out all over campus. I was going to a friend's house to get royally ducked up, and the cops pulled out in front of me, causing me to almost hit them. They proceeded to race each other down the road for a while. They both go to get into a turning lane at the same time and one cop hits the other. They stopped after putting on their lights and got out to check the damage. I pulled up next to them, rolled down my window and asked, "Are you guys okay?" After they said that they were fine, I put on my best troll face and continued, "Do you need me to call the cops?" and sped off as the light turned green. They just glared at me until I was out of their view. Not really a troll, but still awesome. When I was in college, I would take an empty soda can and cut the top and bottom off and put a slit down the side and slip in a beer can. This worked so well that my friends and I could openly drink outside on the quad and safety had no idea. I was shocked it worked so well. One of the safety officers actually warned me that drinking too much Mountain Dew was bad for you. I thanked him for the advice, trying to contain laughter. I wasn't sure if they knew or not at this point, but I found out for sure when my buddy was busted going to a party. He had 6 beers in his backpack, but one was in a sleeve. He was in trouble for 5 of them, but when they returned the pack it had the soda in there. It was pretty gratifying to have them give back a full beer. Oh well. I live in London, UK, where the policemen wear this big, bucket-shaped hats. So it is a law in the UK that a policeman should give such a hat to a pregnant woman should she need to pee. I was with my girlfriend at the time. She was fat and she looked pregnant, so I convinced her to, in a very crowded street, approach a policeman and demand his helmet. The bobby was startled, but anyway he gave her the hat and told her to hide in a nearby alley. The plan was that then she would run with the hat, and so she did. She started running, but the cop could obviously run much faster, and soon she caught her. At this point I was laughing my ass off. She was a rich anyway, and seeing herself in trouble, she could not think of any other thing than starting to untie the shoe of the policeman who was reprimanding her. When he noticed. When I was a senior in high school, we got a new vice principal from some inner city school who thought he was a real hard case. He would actually go around smelling kids' fingers for the scent of weed up. My buddy and I came back from lunch one day, both stone sober, and heard Mr. Hardcase, I forget his real name, was coming out to the parking lot to check fingers. My friend looked at me, then wedged his right hand down the back of his pants into his ass crack. He left it there until we saw the VP coming our way. then pulled it out nonchalantly and we waited. Sure enough, the VP walked up and, in his usual threatening manner, told us to hold out our hands. I did. He smelled my fingers, then moved on to my friend. I could barely keep from losing it as he took a big sniff and then literally jumped backwards, yelling something about my friend needing to wash his damn hands. Needless to say, this ended the finger smelling technique at my high school. Racing to get my girlfriend at the time home before curfew. I am hauling us down this windy mountain road. Make a turn. See a cop in a turnout. Said. Well, Sheetan floored it. I know it will take him a few turns to catch me. So about 1/4 mile up the road I pulled down a little known side street in the middle of a curve. Held the engine and the lights and pray. About 5 seconds later, here comes the cop. Lights and sirens blaring. And thankfully, he shoots right past the road I was on. I found another route to get the girlfriend home. In my case, the cops trolled us. Huge house party. Once a year thing around Christmas, the famous pirate party. Lady wenches and naked dudes with eye patches everywhere. Drunken freshmen as far as the eye can see. The cops are cold, which we anticipated. They show up and it's two guys in their 30s. One is just tired. End of a long day and didn't really want to be dealing with the chow. The other was kind of amused by all the nautical debauchery. When two of the housemates, both over 21, go out to talk to the cops. The more serious cop just says, look, just get some of these people out of here, we don't want a scene. So tell them all we won't arrest anyone. The other cop chimes in, with his very best pirate voice, unless they're scallywags. First cop facepalms and gives his partner this look that says really dude. Everyone cracks the duck up and clears out in a good mood, taking most of the drunken 18-year-olds elsewhere. A story my troll dad likes to tell is from when he was in dental school at USC in the 70s. The street right next to the building with the dental labs is a really long block. So a lot of people just cross in the middle of the street instead of going to a street light. There used to be a cop who would write a lot of jaywalking tickets to people who would do that. My dad and his friends would make giant water balloon launchers using surgical tubing, and would launch water balloons they made from dental gloves at the cop. Once, he saw where they were launching from, but he couldn't get into the building because he didn't have the proper security codes. My friend's story. He was smoking weed in high school with his best friend, both dudes. They had to sneak away from their parents, so they smoked in one of their cars at a scenic outlook near Roanoke, VA. Sure enough, officers found them in the car, but luckily they had already finished and put the weed away. When the officer asked my friend what he was doing up there, the officer suspected weed up. My friend said that he was in love with the other guy and they were about to make out. Damn southern cop didn't know what hit him, so he just walked away. When I was 16 or 17 I would mow lawns for extra cash in the summer. One day I was driving back from mowing a smaller lawn. I had carried the push mower there in the trunk of my car but had left it there because I was mowing their neighbor's yard the next day. On my way home I got pulled over by a sheriff for going a little too fast and he asked me if I had anything in the car he needed to know about. I told him, with a smile, that I had some grass in the trunk. He pulled me out of my car, slapped cuffs on me and opened the trunk to see some dried grass clippings from the mower. He was rather irritated. I love Drew Carey's cop trolling. He claims after he started making decent money, he would purposefully speed through stop signs on very rainy, stormy nights. Officer, do you know why I pulled you over? Drew, yeah. Do you know why I sped through that stop sign? Not really trolling law enforcement, but here's the closest thing I have. Early in high school, maybe 15 years old, my friends and I are cutting through a church parking lot because there is a trail through the woods on the other side, leading from one friend's house to the others. We all notice the smell of burning weed while we're near this church, so we're looking around trying to figure out who is smoking. My friend sees someone move inside the church, It's like 1 AM at this point. Pretty weird. And goes over to check it out. Soon enough there's 8 cop cars in the parking lot. As it turns out, someone had tried to break into this church the night before. And the pastor and his entire family were sleeping inside. In case they came back. They thought that was us. The cops just absolutely would not believe that we were just passing through. And smelled the same thing they surely did. And were just checking out the situation. They detained us for 60-90 minutes looking around the surrounding forestry for our bongs. One of the cops was going around to each entrance to the church. To check for signs of attempted entry. At the back door. He found a roach from a joint on a ledge right inside the church. Apparently. It was the pastor's daughter who had been lighting up right out back. And quickly put out the joint and left it there when she heard her dad yell because he saw us from the front. They wound up letting her off with a warning. And gave me and my 3 friends a ride for the 1 mile to where we were going. With their flashing lights on. Which was pretty ducking cool when we were 15. Junior year of college, all of my roommates and I were 21 years of age. I was the only one with a car, so I was the one who always had to go on beer runs. You can say I look a bit underage for my age and I drove a sportier car. So within the first month of buying alcohol from this one place I got pulled over 4 times. Not kidding. After leaving the liquor store. I noticed they had no reason to pull me over except the fact that I looked under 21. The cops did play legally, I guess, by following me until I did something stupid or noticed something wrong with my car. License plate light out. Took a right turn into the second lane. Side view mirror was broken. Rolling stop right turn on a red light. They made me do a sobriety test once on our busy college street. I got a lot of honks. Well, after completely inspecting my car I went out again to purchase alcohol. No surprise. I was being followed by cops when I left. I knew that if I drove perfectly they could not pull me over. I drove around the block for about 15 minutes and I was shocked they were still following me. I eventually hopped onto the highway. Got off. And then back on. After about 40 minutes of charades I was getting thirsty and missing the pregam, so I pulled into my driveway. The cops followed me. Waited till I opened my trunk and ran in and asked to see my ID for the liquor. I pulled it out with a big grin and they got in their cars and left. I never got pulled over again. Maybe because they finally realized. Hey, this dumbass is 21. Years ago. 1990-91. Everyone used to hang out in the high school parking lot in the small town I lived in. We would sneak beer and smoke weed up occasionally. Just being teenagers. The police would come through once in a while with a German Shepherd trained to sniff out weed up. I always carried tennis gonads in my truck and would pull one of them out and start bouncing it to distract the dog while my friends who had weed on them would wander off the lot. Eventually it got to the point where the dog would come straight to me to have me throw the tennis ball and I would engage in small talk with the officer. Again. While people I knew with weed wandered off. I miss the small towns back in the day where police didn't think everyone was a terrorist and a drug dealer from the start and you could actually have a conversation with them without getting tasered. Closest thing I've ever done to trolling a cop was the following. Got pulled over for speeding. Cop asks if they can search my car and I tell them no. They say they are bringing in the drug dogs. So I sit there and wait for the drug dogs. Lo and behold. He signals that there is something in the car. There wasn't. So they make a beeline straight for a large wooden box sitting on the floor. Halfway under the back seat. They're getting all excited because they think they are gonna bust me with Drew guts in it. They pick it up and see this. Suddenly they're not quite as smiley as they were before. They opened it. Looked through the entire thing and spilled my ducking pieces everywhere. Checked the glove compartment. The center console. Everything. But since I didn't have anything on me, they obviously found nothing. TLDR. Police thought a wooden risk box was a drug smuggling container. Wouldn't let them search it, so they brought in dogs and lied. Turns out wooden box was just a container for risk. Much laughter was had by me.